Lost child told Lycan King, Mama said never talk to monsters. Then he saw her bruises. Barefoot with her small dress torn in places, she stumbled over roots and rocks. Each step echoed in the emptiness. Behind her, faint shouts sounded, human voices, but they carried anger and cruelty, the kind that left marks on more than skin. She pressed her hands over her bruised arms, trying to hide them. Her lips quivered. She remembered her mother's voice, soft but firm. Never talk to monsters, Leora. They will trick you. They will hurt you. But the woods were full of monsters, or so she thought. A low growl rolled through the air, different from human shouts. Leora froze, her breath caught. In front of her, the forest opened into a small clearing bathed in pale moonlight. And there he was. A giant figure stood tall, with eyes that glowed like molten gold. His hair was black as the night around them, falling in waves to his broad shoulders. His face was sharp, noble but wild. Even from a distance, she could see the tension in his muscles, the strength coiled in him like a spring ready to strike. And yet there was a calmness, a strange quiet that made her chest ache with fear and curiosity all at once. She stumbled backward. Mama said, "Never talk to monsters," she whispered, shaking. The figure tilted his head, studying her. "You're hurt," he said, voice deep and resonant like a river over stones. "Who did this to you?" Leora shook her head, backing away. I can't. Monsters don't help." Her words trembled and her tiny hands clutched the edges of her torn dress. The figure stepped closer. His movements were smooth, deliberate. "I am no human," he admitted, "but I am not your enemy, not unless you choose to see me that way." Fear mingled with a strange fascination. Leora's mother had warned her about monsters, but this one, he was different. Something in his golden eyes made her want to trust him, even as every instinct screamed to run. "Why should I trust you?" she asked, voice shaking. He crouched down, bringing his face closer to hers, careful not to appear threatening. "Because you have no one else. Because the woods are not safe tonight. Because your bruises, they speak more than your words." Her eyes widened. How could he see them? She had tried to hide them, even from herself. The memory of the hands that hurt her, of the cold laughter of those who called themselves her neighbors, rose like a dark tide in her chest. She looked away, ashamed. I don't want help," she said softly. "And yet here you are," he replied, voice gentle, almost a whisper. "You are small, you are afraid, and you are alone. You do not have to be alone, not if you don't want to be." Leora's legs wobbled. She wanted to believe him. The thought of being safe, of not running through the endless shadows, was more tempting than fear itself. But the lessons her mother had taught her clawed at her heart. Never talk to monsters, never trust them. The figure straightened. He was tall, imposing, and yet there was no cruelty in him, only power and a strange sadness. "I am Kale," he said. "I am the king of these woods, though not all who dwell here would call me that kindly. But names matter little. What matters is you. Are you hurt?" She swallowed hard, glancing down at her arms and legs. The bruises were dark, some nearly black. She hated them, hated what they represented. She hated the helplessness she felt when hands larger than hers pressed her into corners, mocking her, striking her when no one looked. Kale knelt on one knee, far enough not to frighten her, yet close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. "I see it," he said softly. "Do you want to be healed, little one?" "Heal," she whispered, confused. "Yes," Kale said. "You are in danger, yes, but I can keep you safe. I can help you." Leora shook her head. "No, monsters hurt." Kale's golden eyes softened. "Not all monsters hurt. Not all kings strike. Some of us only wish to protect." Her chest tightened. She had spent her life hiding from the world, hiding from the people who were supposed to care for her. And now, here was someone who could break that chain. She wanted to believe him, wanted to lean into the warmth he offered, but the fear was still strong. Kale stood slowly, the moonlight catching the sharp angles of his face. "You do not need to answer me now. Walk carefully, hide if you must, but know this: I will be watching. And if you are ever truly in danger, you will not face it alone." She hesitated. Every instinct screamed to run, yet something held her there. She did not speak, but her eyes followed him as he turned, moving silently back into the shadows. His figure blended with the night, but she could feel his presence, like a protective weight hovering over the forest. Leora sat down on a fallen log, trembling. The forest seemed darker now, heavier. She wanted to believe Kale's words, wanted to feel safe. But trust was fragile, almost broken entirely, and she did not know if she could mend it. Hours passed, the wind whispering through the trees. She drifted into a restless sleep, hugging her knees. In her dreams, the bruises came alive, faces twisted in anger, voices calling her weak. And then Kale appeared, silent, patient, watching over her. His golden eyes glowed in the dream darkness, not threatening but protective, and for the first time she felt a strange peace. Morning came with a pale, trembling light. Leora awoke to find herself still alone in the clearing. Footprints in the soft earth hinted that Kale had been near, watching. She traced them with her fingers, her heart pounding. She wanted to thank him, to ask questions, but the words stuck in her throat. A sudden rustling in the trees made her jump. She scrambled to her feet. Shadows moved at the edge of her vision. Not human, not entirely, but smaller, faster. Small creatures with glowing eyes and sharp claws, they circled her, curious and hungry. Fear surged through her. Then a shadow fell over them. A growl, low and terrible, rolled through the air. The creatures hissed and fled, disappearing into the undergrowth. Kale stepped into the clearing, his figure immense and commanding. The wind caught his hair, the moonlight glinting in his eyes. He looked terrifying, and yet, somehow, magnificent. "Are you hurt again?" he asked, his voice gentle but firm. Leora shook her head, her lips trembled. "No, I think I am safe." Kale nodded once sharply, his gaze sweeping the forest. "For now," he said, "but the world outside this forest is cruel. And there are those who would hurt you even more than before. You cannot hide forever." She felt a lump in her throat. Her small, fragile heart ached with longing for safety, for protection, for someone who understood. And yet fear held her back. Monsters hurt. Monsters kill. "Mama said." Kale knelt once more, lowering his head to her level. "I do not wish to hurt you," he said softly. "I only wish to give you a choice. You can stay here in the forest where I can protect you, or you can leave and face the world alone. The choice is yours." Her eyes filled with tears. She wanted to run into his arms, to trust him fully, to let go of all the fear she had carried. But the lessons of a lifetime were heavy. She shook her head, stepping back. I cannot. Monsters are dangerous. I must go." Kale rose, towering above her. His eyes softened. "I understand," he said. "But know this, little one, you are not as alone as you think, not while I breathe." She fled again into the forest, but this time she glanced back once. His figure lingered at the edge of the clearing, golden eyes shining, watching, waiting. And somewhere deep in her chest, a spark of hope ignited. A tiny, fragile hope that monsters could sometimes be protectors, and that not all power was cruel. But the forest was still full of danger, and the shadows still whispered. And Kale, the Lycan king, could only watch as she ran, knowing the cruelty of humans would chase her again, and that he could not yet step into their world fully without revealing the monster he was. The moon rose higher, casting silver light over the dark trees. Somewhere deep in the forest, a low growl echoed, a warning, a promise, and a prelude to the trials that awaited them both. Cliffhanger. A pack of hunters appeared at the edge of the forest, following Leora's trail. Kale's gaze sharpened. His golden eyes glowed brighter under the full moon. With a low, haunting howl, he stepped into the shadows, torn between letting nature take its course and stepping into a world he had long abandoned, ready to protect the lost child who had dared to speak to a monster. The sun rose pale and fragile over the village at the forest's edge. Leora moved cautiously, her small feet brushing against the cold earth. She had hoped the night's terror was over, but the human world held its own shadows, ones just as cruel as the monsters her mother warned her about. She tried to blend into the narrow streets, but whispers followed her. Villagers looked at her with suspicion, some with fear, some with cruelty. Her arms were still marked with bruises from yesterday, and those who saw them seemed to measure weakness in silence. A man larger than the others with a sharp face and cruel eyes approached her. "There's the runaway," he said. His voice was like stone striking metal. "You think you can hide from your debts?" Leora's chest tightened. Her legs wanted to run, but the narrow alleys left little space. She pressed her back to a wall, trembling. "Please, I'm small, I've done nothing," she whispered. The man sneered. "Nothing, huh? You owe your master for food, shelter, obedience. And now, little girl, you'll pay." She felt panic rise like a storm in her chest. She tried to dart past him, but his hands caught her shoulders. Pain flared from the bruise on her arm. She wanted to scream, but the alley swallowed her voice. Then a sound broke the moment. A low growl, deep and rolling, echoed from the shadows. The man froze. Leora felt it too, a presence so strong it made her fear turn to awe. The air around them seemed to hum, heavy and tense. Kale stepped into the alley. His massive form blocked the sun for a moment, and his golden eyes glowed like molten gold. The villagers instinctively stepped back. Even the man holding Leora hesitated. "Release her," Kale said, voice calm but commanding. His hands clenched and the air trembled slightly with restrained power. The man laughed nervously. "And if I do?" Kale's eyes narrowed. A growl escaped his throat, low and dangerous. The hair along his arm stood on end. "Then you will regret it." For a moment time hung still. Leora could feel the power radiating from him, a force that could crush bones without effort, yet his gaze never left her. He was terrifying, yet there was a promise in that danger, a promise of protection. The man faltered and let her go, stumbling backward. Kale stepped closer to Leora, his form enormous yet careful. "Are you unharmed?" he asked, his voice softer now. Leora shook, hugging herself. I think so." Thank you." Her voice was trembling, but gratitude shone through fear. Kale glanced at the man, then back at her. "We should leave now." He moved quickly, like a shadow slipping through the streets. Leora followed, her small hands clutching the edge of his cloak. She felt the warmth of his body beside her, a strange comfort in a world that had never been kind. They reached the edge of the village and entered the forest again. The trees seemed to close around them, shielding them from prying eyes. Leora exhaled, letting the tension drain slightly from her body. Why did you help me?" she asked, still hesitant. Kale's golden eyes studied her as if weighing his words carefully. "Because I can. Because no one should be hurt for being small or weak. You were in danger and I could not allow it." Leora looked down. "Monsters always hurt people," my mama said. "Your mother warned you," Kale interrupted gently, and her words were wise. "Not all monsters are kind, but not all are cruel either. I am a monster, yes, but not all monsters are enemies." Her heart pounded. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust that not all creatures with sharp teeth and glowing eyes were meant to hurt her. But fear was a habit carved deep into her bones. They moved deeper into the forest, to a small clearing where a stream ran silver under the morning light. Kale knelt by the water, letting it ripple around his hands. "Drink," he said, and Leora obeyed, cupping her hands in the clear water. "You're very small," Kale said softly, watching her, "and yet there is strength in you." "I don't feel strong," she whispered. "I feel scared." Kale's eyes softened. "Courage is not the absence of fear," he said. "It is what you do in spite of it." They sat by the stream in silence for a while. The forest seemed to breathe with them, and Leora felt a strange sense of calm. She dared not look directly at him, afraid that her feelings might betray her fear. Suddenly, a rustling in the trees made her jump. Kale's head snapped toward the sound, eyes glowing brighter. A group of small, vicious creatures, not human, emerged from the undergrowth. Their eyes shone red, their claws glinting in the sunlight. Leora's heart froze. She had never seen anything like them. The creatures hissed, circling closer. "Kale!" she cried, panic rising. Kale stood, enormous and terrifying. His growl rolled through the clearing, a sound so deep it seemed to shake the leaves from the trees. The creatures hissed again, but Kale did not move forward aggressively. He only stepped slowly, power coiled in him like a spring. "Go," he whispered, almost to himself, and the creatures, intimidated by his presence, scattered into the shadows. Leora stared at him, wide-eyed. You could have hurt them," she said. Kale looked down at her. "Yes," he said, "but they were not my enemies. I only protect what I care for, and I care for you." The words were simple, but they struck her like a hammer. Leora felt something shift in her chest, a mixture of fear, awe, and a strange longing. She wanted to step closer to feel safe, yet she could not yet let go of the lessons she had been taught. Kale knelt again, this time offering his hand. "I can take you somewhere safe," he said. "A place where no one will hurt you, where you can rest without fear." She hesitated. Every instinct screamed to run, but every part of her body longed for the safety he offered. Finally, slowly, she took his hand. His warmth enveloped her, and for the first time in a long time she felt the world might not be entirely cruel. As they walked through the forest, Kale spoke little, letting the silence stretch between them. Leora stole glances at him, noting the sharp angles of his face, the way his eyes glowed faintly in the shadows. There was something noble in him, something that seemed older than the forest itself. Finally, they reached a small hidden glade where a cabin stood, surrounded by protective runes carved into the trees. Kale opened the door and gestured inside. "Here, you will be safe," he said. Leora stepped inside, marveling at the small comforts, a bed, blankets, and a warmth she had not felt in months. She felt a small smile tug at her lips. "Thank you," she whispered. Kale nodded, standing near the door, watching the forest beyond. "You are welcome," he said. "Rest. Tomorrow we will speak more. You must regain your strength." As Leora lay down, she felt a strange mixture of fear and trust. Kale was a monster, yes, but he was also her protector, and in that thought a spark of hope took root in her heart. But the forest outside was never quiet for long. A faint sound reached her ears, footsteps moving silently through the underbrush. Leora sat up, her heart racing. Kale's head snapped toward the window, eyes glowing gold. "They are coming," he said softly, almost to himself. "Not all humans are cruel, but some will never rest until they have what they seek." Leora's chest tightened. She realized that danger was not gone. It had followed her here, and Kale, as powerful as he was, might not be able to stop everything. Yet for the first time she did not feel entirely alone. The night fell again, silver and cold, but this time the cabin glowed with a faint warmth. Kale stood outside, listening, watching, waiting. And Leora, lying under the blankets, realized that monsters could be kind, that courage could grow from fear, and that her story with the Lycan king was only beginning. Cliffhanger. From the edge of the forest, a shadow moved silently. A figure watched the cabin, eyes gleaming with malice. Kale sensed it, the scent of human cruelty, mixed with curiosity and danger. The forest trembled as he prepared to face what was coming, knowing that protecting Leora would test not just his strength, but his very nature. The forest was still under a heavy moon, its silver light casting shadows that danced between the trees. Leora sat inside the small cabin, clutching a blanket around her shoulders. Her heart still raced from the footsteps she had heard outside, the sense of danger that seemed to seep through the walls. Kale stood near the doorway, his golden eyes scanning the forest. He could feel them, human hunters, drawn by curiosity, by greed, by malice. They had come for the child, for the vulnerable human girl who had dared to step into the forest. Kale's body tensed, muscles coiled, instincts screaming to unleash his full power. But he did not. Not yet. Leora watched him, trembling. "Will they hurt you?" she asked softly. Kale's gaze softened almost sadly. "They might try," he said, But you will not see them succeed. I will protect you." Her chest tightened. She had spent her life hiding from cruelty, from hands that struck her without reason. Now, in the presence of this powerful being, this monster her mother had warned her about, she felt a strange warmth, protection, strength, safety. Something that made her believe that monsters could sometimes be more human than humans themselves. The sound of rustling drew Cale's attention. Shadows moved between the trees, quick and silent. He stepped outside, his form enormous and commanding. The hunters appeared at the edge of the glade, their eyes wide with fear and greed as they saw him. Cale's growl rolled through the night, deep and terrifying. The hunters froze, their weapons shaking in their hands. One man tried to step forward, but Cale's gaze pierced him. "Leave," he said, voice like thunder over stone. "You will not touch her, not now, not ever." The hunters hesitated, then, realizing the strength before them, retreated slowly into the shadows. Cale did not relax until they had vanished completely. Inside the cabin, Leora exhaled, her small body shaking. You saved me," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. Cale knelt beside her, his expression softening. "No one should hurt you, little one," he said, "and I will not allow it, not ever." Her eyes met his, and in that moment the fear she had carried for so long began to loosen. I think I understand now," she said. "You're not the monster I was told to fear." Cale reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Not all monsters are cruel," he said softly. "Some of us protect. Some of us love in ways humans cannot always understand." Leora's chest tightened at his words. She had never felt this mixture of fear and awe, safety and longing. Her life had been full of shadows, full of pain, but now she could feel a spark of hope, a fragile seed of trust. The days passed slowly in the cabin. Cale taught her to listen to the forest, to understand its whispers. They walked along streams, through meadows lit by moonlight, and for the first time Leora felt free from fear. She began to speak more, sharing stories of her past, of her mother's warnings, of the cruelty she had endured. Cale listened, patient and calm, never interrupting, never judging. Through their time together, a bond grew between them. Leora's fear began to fade, replaced by admiration and trust. Cale's heart, long buried under centuries of solitude and duty, began to feel something new, a tenderness, a longing, a quiet joy at seeing the girl safe, alive, and slowly healing. One night, the moon hung full and silver in the sky. Leora sat by the stream, her reflection trembling in the water. Cale stood behind her, silent, watching her. "Cale," she said softly, do you always live in the forest?" He smiled faintly, a shadow of melancholy in his golden eyes. "For centuries, yes. But I have never felt truly alone until now, until you came." Her heart ached at his words. You are not just a monster," she whispered. "You are something more, something good." Cale knelt beside her, reaching out to touch her hand gently. "And you," he said softly, "are braver than you know. You survived cruelty, fear, and loneliness. And you are still here, still willing to trust. That courage, it is rare, it is precious." Tears welled in Leora's eyes. She had spent so long hiding, so long fearing the world, that the kindness, the strength, and the patience Cale showed her seemed almost impossible. Yet here it was, real, safe. A sudden movement in the trees made her flinch. Cale's golden eyes glowed brighter, muscles tensing. A group of creatures, drawn by curiosity, emerged from the shadows, smaller, faster, dangerous. Cale rose, his presence commanding, and the creatures froze. He did not strike. He did not harm them. "Go," he said quietly, and they scattered into the darkness, intimidated by the power he radiated. Leora stared in awe. You could have hurt them," she said. "Yes," Cale said, "but I do not harm unless necessary. My purpose is to protect, not destroy." The realization struck Leora like a bolt of lightning. He was a monster, yes, but not cruel. He had chosen mercy, restraint, and care. And in that choice, he had taught her a lesson more powerful than any warning her mother had given. That night under the glow of the moon, Leora curled close to the warmth Kale offered. The forest seemed to hum around them, alive with life and magic, and for the first time she felt safe. Not just physically, but in her heart. She trusted him. She cared for him. And in the quiet, tender moments, a fragile love began to bloom, one built not on possession or fear, but on trust, respect, and the courage to face the darkness together. Days turned into weeks. Kale and Leora explored the forest, learning from each other. He taught her to move silently, to listen to the whispers of the trees, to see the beauty and danger in the natural world. She, in turn, reminded him of the warmth of human kindness, of laughter, and the simple joys that centuries of solitude had almost erased from his heart. One evening, Kale led her to a hidden grove, where silver light filtered through the leaves like 1,000 tiny stars. He stopped and looked at her, eyes glowing gold. "Leora," he said softly, "you have grown stronger, not just in body but in spirit. You have faced fear, cruelty, and darkness, and you still choose to see goodness. That is remarkable." Her chest swelled with emotion. "And you," she said, voice trembling, "have shown me that monsters can protect, can love, can care. I trust you, Kale." He knelt before her, a shadow of his enormous form bending with care and respect. "Then we are bound," he said, "bound not by fear but by trust, and together we will face whatever the world sends our way." A sudden rustle in the trees broke the moment. Kale's eyes sharpened, sensing danger. But this time he was ready. His presence alone was enough to hold the forest at bay. Leora stood beside him, feeling the courage that had grown within her over weeks of shared moments and lessons. The night stretched, alive with possibilities. Kale and Leora stood together under the moonlight, a monster and a girl, bound by trust, by care, and by the quiet beginnings of love. The forest, once a place of fear and shadows, now felt like a sanctuary, a world where both of them could belong. Yet beyond the trees, unknown threats still lingered. Kale sensed them, figures in the distance, drawn by malice and curiosity alike. But for the first time he did not fear. With Leora at his side, he knew he could face any danger, and she, small but brave, knew that she would never be alone again. Cliffhanger ending. A faint shadow emerged at the edge of the grove, watching. Kale's golden eyes narrowed, muscles coiling. But Leora stepped forward, hand in his, her courage shining brighter than the moonlight. Together, they faced the unknown, ready to protect, ready to fight, and ready to define their own story in a world of shadows and monsters.